Wait for it. Wait for it. And we're live. Hey, you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans, a Stabby chaos coordinator, and one chief shenanigator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guest, Matt M.J. Struven, introduce himself to our listeners and viewers at home.
Howdy, everybody. Thanks for having me on. My name is Matt M.J. Struven, if you want me to sound a little pretentious, like I'm an author or something. I am, I think if you find my tag across various places on the internet, I'm a sarcastic, rugby-playing, beach-laying, sushi-loving, beer-drinking writer. Or something to that effect, though I'm mostly retired from rugby. I live in Santa Barbara, California, though I lived in Asheville, North Carolina with my family for the last 4-ish years. And yeah, I'm a nerd. I love writing, being creative, movies, video games, all that kind of stuff as well.
Okay, what kind of beer you like?
I would say I go for darkers. I like stouts.
Okay. I like light beer, although people get that confused. They don't realize light beer and dark beer are brewed differently. Light beer, they think of like Budweiser and the American piss water instead of actual beer that's properly brewed. So, yeah. Okay. So you said you played rugby. What position?
I played a mixture. I played for like 8 years. So I played mostly in the back line. I played a little bit of fly half and a little bit of fullback. I'd say those are the two main positions that I played. You ever play?
Okay. Yeah, I played in college and briefly for the Army. I was as a prop, but with the military, in college we were a lot of us were in the Guard or Reserve, so we had to meet military standards, which means we had a running team because even our forwards were not as big as some of the other teams. Because if we were that big, we wouldn't make height weight. So ours was we had to outrun them. That was the goal.
Nice. Yeah, like I mentioned, I played for many years, but I'm mostly retired, and I don't have enough time. Plus, all the injuries stack up. So, I can't say I'll never play a game again, but for the most part, probably no more seasons. Just a few games here and there.
Pick up games and the like. The problem for me is once you have a head injury, because I have a traumatic brain injury, every future head injury after that could be the one that ends you. It's just a fact of life. And so a lot of people in my life are like, JR, no, you can't play rugby anymore, but it's fun. Yes, but dropping dead would be bad for business. So
yeah, exactly.
People have kind of vetoed that for me. But
yeah, I've got a family now, and they kind of love me. So when I was single and just hitting the towns and the bars every night, nothing to live for, I was like, yeah, who cares if I get hurt? But now my wife and my daughter would get a little pissed, and they'd have to take care of me. But it's funny that the first game my now wife actually came to watch me play, I got a concussion, and she was very concerned from then on.
Don't do that to a woman.
My first time I bit through my lip because I got hit when I was playing for the Army, and the girlfriend started puking everywhere, and the other girlfriends laughed at her because reasons. So I'm sympathetic, and I hurt my knee at boot camp. So the walk-on spot at college I had for wrestling kind of went away because bad knees, you can't shoot. Are you really a wrestler anymore? Or so the coach told me. And so I had to call my parents, and I'm like, I found this sport called rugby. Do you mind sending me cleats? And my poor dad, he's like, wait. So you can't wrestle because you hurt your knee, so you're going to play rugby instead. I'm like, yeah, I need granddad. Oops. That was a hard sell, but he sold my mom for me, so I'm eternally grateful. So, but the good thing is once you're at the point where you're no longer playing the sport because you age out, you can always get better in the story. So now, like, I would have taken that hit. I ran faster and farther and uphill both ways.
Pirates.
Exactly. Drinking beer on the sidelines.
Right. You get better when you're not playing anymore because the stories just keep growing. I didn't ride the pine. I was starting and, go on, make the story better and better every time.
Yeah.
Rugby stories or any sports stories are kind of like fish stories, I think. They just keep getting better with time.
Yep. And especially those creative of us just keep adding on to it.
Yeah.
We would never do that.
At least to some long-standing arguments. Like my stepdad and I have a long-standing argument. I went to Scouts, and they had an archery range, and I had never fired a bow and arrow, but I had fired a rifle, and I just done really, really well on the marksmanship test. So I'm like, this is going to be the same. I can handle this. I'm going to hit a bullseye. And my stepdad was like, I bet you $20 you don't. Now, this is 1990s money, so $20 could probably buy me a car. I don't know. And so I fire, I pull back, do like you taught me. It goes, it lands, it hits a bullseye. 3 rows over and 2 rows back from the one I was aiming at. I say it should still count. He says it was not, the one that was on our lane. So we have that argument, and we have been since 1993. So far, it's a standstill. He has not given me my $20 or my interest.
Not going to happen, man.
No, probably not. You at least agree, right? It should count. Totally.
No.
I mean, if there was no target specified and you just said bullseye, I think it counts if you hit a bullseye.
Right. He did not specify which lane. He just said bullseye. So they never let me fire again after that for some strange reason. They were kind of afraid where the arrow might end up.
Yeah, funny how that works.
All right. So before we get too deep into this interview, Matt, we do have to ask you the religion questions. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Each of them have a special place in my heart for many different reasons. I'm going to have to go with Star Wars, though.
Okay. What is it about Star Wars that speaks to you?
I feel like I love the universe. I love the magical Jedi aspect of it. I think the blend of sci-fi and fantasy into this space opera genre really just tickles a spot for me, because I'm also a fantasy nerd. So it kind of hits the sweet spot of both of those with the Jedi Knights and the lightsabers and the Force, as well as the lasers.
Okay. Because we're polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia?
I have never actually read The Wheel of Time or Game of Thrones, but I've seen the show of Game of Thrones. I've seen part of the Wheel of Time show, and I have read Chronicles of Narnia, of course. So I'm going to have to go with Narnia.
Okay. Did you read that as a kid, or have you read it?
I did, yeah. Yeah, I read all of them as a kid. Gosh, I could probably still name all 7 books. Don't put me on the spot, actually. I take that back. I could probably get 6 of the 7. But yeah, I remember reading them when I was a kid over and over again. Same as Harry Potter. I read those many, many times when I was younger. But, I'm surprised you didn't throw Lord of the Rings on there, because that's my true religion.
So
we used to have Lord of the Rings on there, but we had to take it off because it was so far a winner above everything else with pretty much everybody. It's the only thing we ever talked about. So we adjusted the list. But I do have a Narnia question for you, and that is, do you read them in the right order, or do you read them in the order of blasphemy?
So do you mean the publishing order or the chronological order? Is that what you're asking?
Yes. Which one do you read them in?
I have read them in both orders because I read the series many times. Okay. Which one I prefer? I mean, I'd have to say chronological order. I don't think I could name them.
I thought we were going to be friends, and now I am brokenhearted.
I'm not sure I could name them in chronological order anymore, though, but I could probably name them in publishing order. 6 of the 7, maybe. We'll see.
Yes, we'll get there.
There won't be a test.
All right, move on.
Okay.
Yeah, the Game of Thrones just got so many people. People would be like, okay, so this is the part where they're going to say, yep, Lord of the Rings. Okay, next question. It got to be a little too predictable for the audience. So, and then when guests come back, we ask a different set of questions of just, 3 options for fantasy, 3 options for sci-fi. And weren't applicable. We themed them to the guest. But for everyone's first interview, they do have to answer the OG questions. So.
And I may someday read the Game of Thrones if he ever finishes them. I refuse to start them unless he's going to finish them.
So that's my problem.
Yep.
I'm a book nerd at heart, so I don't mind watching film adaptations. I just want to watch. If the film came first and then the books, I'll watch the film and then go to the books. Whichever came first is generally what I want to read or engage with first. Most of the time, the books are first. It's very often not the case that the screen came first. And since I know it would be a futile effort, because again, no ending for Game of Thrones because he's not going to write it. It would frustrate the heck out of me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I just never started. I mean, if I had started when they were coming out like everyone else and just sort of went along for the ride, it'd be a little different, I think. But much like Harry Potter, I just, they weren't, when I was available reading them, they weren't hot topics that everyone was talking about.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I think I was in college when Harry Potter was coming out, so I wasn't exactly the target demographic.
Aging yourself there, man. I was like in elementary school.
Oh, both of you go away. Shut up.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm old, but, when I was in the Army, dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Yeah, whatever. I was around before that, so...
Speaking of dinosaurs, one of the crying shames of adulthood is we stop asking ourselves the important questions. So, sponsors, we are going to bring that back. I'm going to ask you, sir, what is your favorite dinosaur?
You know, I feel like a lot of adults might not have a good answer, but I do have an answer because I have a 4-year-old who loves dinosaurs. And I'm going to have to say Parasaurolophus because it is really fun to say.
I like that.
It's one of the guys with the big heads. They got that big thing, the big crest.
Luckily, I didn't spell it so bad that Word could fix the spelling, because sometimes that does happen. Like when I spell bureaucratic wrong, it's always so bad. They're like, I don't know what you're trying to do. But with that one was close enough. So for the show notes, it's going to be in there. The rule of cool is definitely in effect when it comes to dinosaurs. And you know, looking cool is as important as anything else, I would think. So has your opinion changed on dinosaurs post feathers? The belief that now we think many of the dinosaurs might have been feathered friends.
I think my opinion on dinosaurs has changed, that they are less frightening looking, and my opinion of modern birds has changed in that they are very terrifying and that they behave like little dinosaurs, just tearing each other apart. And modern birds are a little bit more scary once you realize they came from dinosaurs.
Yeah, I'm just picturing like the velociraptors as murder chickens now, and
yeah,
I do wonder though, now that we know that, would they taste like chicken? I mean,
absolutely.
What exactly would they taste like if we were eating them? Everyone always assumed more like alligator, right? Because we just assumed lizard.
Yeah, but alligator kind of tastes like chicken anyway. So
well, I mean, everything tastes like chicken if you ask the right people.
It's gamier. It's good, but it's gamier.
I mean, with that logic, everything tastes like alligator.
Everything now tastes like alligator.
I think alligators are the last one that have a direct line like that, other than they would say birds, I think. But I mean, alligator is the closest if you trace back to its prehistoric roots.
It's got to be one of them. It's got to be right up there.
So we are civilized human beings here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. We are no longer knuckle-dragging troglodytes. So coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
Well, if it's after 4 p.m., it's going to be tea because the caffeine affects me, and I'll tell you why. I used to drink a pot of coffee every morning. That's right. Not a pot throughout the entire day, a pot every morning, plus a couple extra cups in the afternoon. So I realized I was nothing more than an addict, and I would get terrible, terrible withdrawals, even going like 12 to 14 hours without cups. So now I abstain from coffee most of the time. I don't make it like a super harsh thing, like no coffee for you, but most weekdays I don't have coffee. On the weekends, I will have coffee, and the way I take it is actually very good. I put in some vanilla protein powder, and so it's more than just like a little bit of fat in there with your cream, a little bit of protein with the protein powder. Makes it taste a little bit like a vanilla latte, a little frothy on the top. So that's how I take my coffee.
Where did the idea of adding the protein powder come from? Because I don't feel like anyone's ever said that on this show before. And your episode 691, and then we had another 175 before that in the previous iteration of the podcast. So I mean, we've been doing this for a while. Nobody's ever said protein powder in their coffee before.
I'm such a beautiful little butterfly, unique butterfly, a little unique snowflake. Look at me. You know, I think it came from my wife. Now, where she heard it from, I don't know. Maybe even this brand of protein powder. They might have recommended it, and to be frank, I love it. I don't know if I could do it any other way. Like I've done sugar and cream in past, and I just feel like it's just not the same as the protein powder. It's perfect.
I mean, hey, if it works, we had one guest who's an English professor at a university in Las Vegas who said he does the peanut butter in his
peanut
coffee.
butter. Yeah.
And I'm still trying to figure out, like, it's a protein. I get why the flavors might mix because, I mean, people do nut flavored lattes, right? Like hazelnut's a thing. But I'm just thinking peanut butter itself would just like clump at the bottom. How do the flavors even max? How do you even stir that in? Like, I'm just trying to process that in my head. I still haven't gotten it. One of these days, I'm just going to have to do the experiment and try it myself.
It does melt. Peanut butter has a decent melting point. So you would just have to not put in too much because you've got to keep that balance so it'll stay in solution. So it's doable.
Yeah.
Well, next time I come on, I'll tell you if
it.
peanut butter or protein powder is better.
There
you go. See, well, we're going to have you back because in addition to writing books, you also have done a film, horror fantasy novel. And for that one, Jana is not our horror fan, but my other co-hosts are busy right now because they're working. We're going to drag them on and make them take the day off so we can do that because that's kind of their jam. And they were really looking forward to that, which is why we decided to do the book first because they are not they're working at the moment. So
because they weren't looking forward to the book. All right, I get it, guys.
No, but I mean, they couldn't make the day anyway. So if they were going to have to miss one, they didn't want to miss the horror movie.
It's true.
because that's
Awesome.
their jam. Like we sit through horror just to humor them because that's what
It's
we do.
I
And
sit through
because-
horror like this.
Jana just finds something else. Like she just miraculously has somebody's birthday again, twice this
Again.
month. It's the same
Always
guy's
birthday.
birthday. It's just funny how that works.
I don't do
Well, it's
horror.
funny 'cause I'm not
My
even a
imagination's
horror
wild
fan.
enough. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm not even a horror fan. You know, I don't want to talk about the movie. That's for next time. But I thought I was gonna be making comedies, and I'll still get to those someday. But I'm not even a horror fan myself. Sometimes the muse just strikes you, and you're like, ooh, that's kind of creepy.
I have seen one horror that I did like, and it was I don't know. I guess if you consider it predator horror, but basically the predator went back into like medieval times, and he's fighting actual knights in the woods, and it was I don't know if it was an official movie or a fan made movie or what, but it was really well done. Which I thought was kind of cool. Because I mean, this was actually out before Predator went to the American West and fought the Indians, or wherever it was in the U.S. and they were fighting, I think, with the Comanches. But before that, they had this one where they were fighting the medieval knights, which was kind of cool. So
yeah, that does sound fun. And
So-
Jana, you know, real quick, I have to compliment you on the fact that you can knit at the same time. Or is that knitting or crocheting?
It's crocheting.
That's crocheting. Okay, I see the little hooks on the end. My
Yes.
wife, she's tried to pick up knitting, and she's having a hard time doing it without just focusing on that. And I'm like, just keep practicing. You're going to get better. You can start doing it while you're doing other things. And she's getting there. So I appreciate
yes.
that you can do that.
You totally get to that. Well, we have a long running joke that if you catch me on the podcast and I'm not working on a project, that it's the body snatchers. And at that point, you know, somebody send help, because I do a lot better with paying attention and behaving myself if my hands are busy, and I'm always working on projects. But yes, so I had to get
Nice.
back to this because it's another baby blanket and it's almost done. I had like 4 nieces and nephews all get married in the last 2 years, and so we expect that the next thing coming up is going to be things that I need baby blankets for.
Planning ahead. That's nice.
Exactly.
So obviously, like you like all the nerdy things. You make the movies. You've written a book, but nobody just wakes up and says, you know, I don't like fantasy. I don't like sci-fi, but I'm just going to write a book about it. So how did your love of the speculative fiction genre start? Like, where was the origin point for you?
Well, I mean, when I mentioned when I was younger, I was a huge book nerd. Like I was the kid that I was athletic. I would go play on the playground. I'd play football with the guys and play basketball with the guys. But also, if I was into a book, I would just go and read on the playground for like my entire break. So my love of reading started when I was very young. As I mentioned, Narnia. I read Lord of the Rings probably starting in 3rd or 4th grade. I read it like 10 times between then and college. I read Foundation trilogy. I read Harry Potter. I read the Redwall series. So anything that was fantastic and out of the world, I really loved. And so graduated from that a little bit into video games. You can see, actually, maybe you can't see, but I have Master Chief's helmet here. I have the Dovahkiin helmet right here from Skyrim. I have the Helm of Elendil from Lord of the Rings here. And this one here, you probably can't see it, but that's the Mandalorian helmet. I could move my camera, but then I'd be off screen. So I just steep myself in storytelling and nerdy things ever since I was younger. And I kind of realized that I like being a creator as well. I love getting my ideas out of my head. You know, one of my favorite quotes, and I'm probably paraphrasing here, but it's writing is an act of ego, and we might as well admit it. It's because like what's going on in my head is so important. I have to tell everybody else about what's going on in my head.
And convince them to have it go on in their head too.
Exactly.
That's one of those wonderful things about creation, is that you can say it's mind control. It really is. I'm going to take my mind and I'm going to control your mind so that it sees the same things or close enough, and you feel things, and it's totally mind control. That was Dean Wesley Smith at one of the conventions brought that up, that the whole thing about being a creator was that you're actually controlling people's minds, and how cool is that?
Yeah. And so there's the whole messaging thing. Maybe there's some messages I want to get across as well. We can talk about that later. Hopefully I'm not too preachy. But yeah, you know, I've just consumed so much content in my life. I feel like I have a feel for what a good story is, what makes up a good story, what makes up good characters, what makes up a good plot. And so, you know, that they always say to write the book that you want to read. So I did.
So you can judge a lot about a person by the faction they pick in certain games. So Skyrim, who are you siding with?
Are you saying like which race or which, like the Stormcloaks, or like what do you say?
Yeah, both.
Gosh, I have not really gotten into that game in probably a decade. So I don't want to speak on the plot too much. As far as a race, yeah, I'm just a good old human. Just a good
I always
old
play the
human.
Nords because they're gonna be, or the Nords because I like the Viking aspect to it, and I always side with the Stormcloaks because basically it's like you've got the religious extremists with the Imperials or the slightly crazy terrorists with the Stormcloaks, but they just want autonomy. So it's it speaks to the American in me, right? Like you got to overthrow the ruling class. But you can generally tell a lot about people by who they side with in these various games that have these like deep lore. Because it does, there's reasons people side with certain actions and factions and aspects of plots. I think it speaks to different people for different reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
You name any lore in any franchise that's sufficiently deep enough that has sides like that, and you can learn about people by who they side with if you know enough about that IP.
Yeah, absolutely. I love video games as a storytelling medium as well. Like a lot of people don't necessarily think about that, especially if they're casual gamers. They're like, oh, there's no story in Tetris. Okay, yeah, there's no story in Tetris. But like if you look at any of the modern genre of games, especially like RPGs, there's so much that goes into that. And then the players can live out the experience in a way that they can't necessarily live it out the same way when you're reading a book or watching a movie. And again, every genre has its own things that it's good at, but I think video games excels in really bringing people to inhabit the world of the game.
So the cool thing about a lot of the open world games for the RPGs is how much the lore is deeper than they think, because most people don't bother. But if you pick up most of those books in that game, somebody has written those books. Now they're not very long books. Some of them you might get a few pages because it's a burnt book and you can only read the fragments if you can open it. But some of those books, I mean, the lore dumps are in the books you find in the various libraries throughout. And just that level of detail, I think, is just fascinating.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, we do get a lot of media tie-in with other stuff now, where we do say, oh, there's going to be books that go with this franchise. There's going to be sometimes feature films that go with this franchise. We were talking on the Discord about Wing Commander and somebody saying, oh, you guys have to do that film. And for them, the film was that first thing. And I'm like, I played the first game back in 1990 because there was the games, and then there was a television show. It was an animated show. It was very, very cool. And then there were, comics, and then there were all these other things. And so we're seeing that video games can be that same kind of a starting point. If you get a really great game, then sometimes it starts branching out, and that increases that lore that you're talking about, because they can say, well, you got all this lore in the video game, but then we're also going to bring in these other things. Or video games like Mech Warrior, where the whole thing, Mech Warrior 5 comes out and everybody goes, where are the clans? We need more of that, because that was such a big thing earlier. And so now they have to come out and say, yes, we get it, and here are the clans. So people really get attached. The storytelling is a really important part of the gaming experience.
Yeah. I mean, one example that comes to my mind is Halo. Like Halo was a video game, and then they started writing the books, and then there's the TV show. I could be wrong on this one, The Witcher. I'm pretty sure that was a video game first, though maybe there was a book first. I'm not 100% sure, but now there's a TV show
game was first.
Yeah, which was video game, and then book and show, and yeah, it's amazing how many different directions they can take that same IP.
Yeah.
Same with Warhammer. I think the game came first.
Yeah, absolutely.
The lore followed. So before we air this commercial and we get to talking about the book that brought us here, because I know Jana gets chopping at the bits to talk about books, and she gets really into fantasy. So, but before we do that, so you mentioned that you're a fan of several franchises, several IPs. If someone knocked on your door and said, Matt, you stop everything and you're going to write this, what franchises would you be willing to stop everything to write for?
What franchises? I mean, I would love to write something for Lord of the Rings someday, and I have actually not watched a lot of Rings of Power, mostly because I was so disappointed about the fact that they were writing about the stuff that I wanted to write about. So I'm a little disappointed about that. But Lord of the Rings, I love to write for someday. I'd love to write for Star Wars someday. Any of the big names. And it's not that I'm I don't know what's a good word. It's not that I'm like a generic culture fanboy. It's not that I just love the big things. It's like I love the big things because I feel like it's a way to reach a lot of people with my ideas. And again, everyone has to know what's going on inside my head. No one wants to read something by MJ Struven, but if they're like, oh, Lord of the Rings, I'll watch Lord of the Rings, and I just happen to write it, I get all my stuff across that way.
Yeah, and I think we don't have very many water cooler topics left in culture, because everything is sort of dispersed to such niche, things with the internet, that if you can touch on some of the big ones that are left, there's power in that. I don't fault it. I mean, the big ones are on my list too, but also, Skyrim or Stargate or Primeval, which is a dinosaur show, which you probably dig if you haven't checked it out. I highly recommend it. But I mean, like, there's a lot of smaller ones too. So I'm with you though. Okay, we're gonna pause for a moment while we shamelessly shill for the man, and while we're doing that, rest yourselves. Don't fear, Jana will still be working away on that blanket during the commercial.
Yes, I will. There's still more rows.
Yeah, and then we'll come back and talk about your book. So without further ado,
from darkness to destiny, Layla awaits. Blinded by fate, Eric awakens to a new life on a remote farm, cared for by the enigmatic mute Layla. As secrets unravel and adventures call, can love conquer the shadows? This gripping fantasy, unearthed from antiquity, delivers pulse-pounding action, divine interventions, and timeless themes of worth and courage. Layla, available on Amazon. Ignite your imagination today.
All right, thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. And now we are here to talk about the secrets of Erilaz.
Erilaz. Secrets of the Erilaz, yes. And here is a nice cover with tons of glare on it, and it's my offer proof. Let's see if I can just hold it like this so you can kind of see. Yeah, it's very shiny. Oh, there we go. Nice. Yeah, I'm sure you'll put a picture of it somewhere else, or you can.
I will once we get there. But since you did make this beautiful trailer, we're gonna, and we already got them ready for it. We're gonna go ahead and show that trailer, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Narayan is little more than a grown child and unfit for kingly duties.
Unfit or not, he is the next in line. There is chaos in the streets, my lord. The people do not know what to make of this magician.
It was but a trick of the eye. There is no such thing as magic.
It does not matter. War is declared on you.
Einar is a powerful tool to be used.
Now that I see magic, it must be forbidden, for it reeks of evil intent.
It's time he went the way of his father.
Why are you following me?
I have nowhere else to go.
You must learn to control your spirit, for you cannot live as you do and live as I do.
All right, so that is the movie trailer. So how did you put that together? I'm assuming it was generated with like some sort of AI movie making?
Well, I had a $400,000 budget. I went and hired 50 actors, and no, it was absolutely 100% done with AI. That was done with Google VO3.
Nice.
Full disclosure on the AI there. Don't even try and hide that. I actually used zero AI in the writing of my book, just to clarify, only for the book trailer. And it was really a blast to make. So, I didn't exactly track how long it took me to make. My guess is somewhere around 30 hours. So it's not like I just popped a couple prompts in and called it good. I was really had a vision in mind for every single one of those scenes. And, the ironic thing is I made that, I don't know, maybe 6-ish months ago. It's already outdated. Like if I were to go and use a new AI tool, I could probably make a video that'd be twice as good as that one. So really AI is up and coming. And, I get I have a lot of conversations around AI and the utility of it. I feel like some people are super against it. They're like, you're taken away from creativity. But as I mentioned, kind of in jest at the beginning of this, like a book trailer of that quality and length would have costed many tens of thousands of dollars to make, if not more. And so it's bringing availability to small time creators like myself to open doors where I could not have done things like that before.
Mm-hmm.
No, I got no complaints about it, but I just thought it was well done. I mean,
Thank you.
Sometimes I think AI is going to get so good it's going to bounce against the uncanny valley, and it'll be an issue going forward. So I think this was the sweet spot where it didn't feel bad, but you kind of could tell what was going on. So is this based on the scene in the carriage, right, where they've got? Well, first off, Jana, you've got your first question. You always got to ask because they're going to get mad if we don't.
I know. I was waiting, but you always get talking and then I don't get to ask my question. But it's a really important question. So because of our listenership and because of where I stand as a mom, one of the things we like to ask about the book is kind of what would the rating be if we're comparing it to movies? Are we in the PG-13, PG? Having just seen the trailer, I'm not going to say general audiences because I can see we've got the fantasy violence and possibly some smoochies going on. So about where would you put it? What age reader would this appeal to? Give or take.
I would say, when I set out to write it, I aimed for PG-13, but I think it ended up R. So full transparency, there are very adult themes in this. There is some SA. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that goes on in this book. There's violence. There's alcoholism. And, one thing I like to tell people is I wrote this not for glorification of these things. I wrote it for characterization, and perhaps you can learn some good lessons from them. So don't say, oh, that character is doing something that I disagree with. Matt's an evil person. I also think that evil people are in this book. I'll let you make the judgment on who you think the evil people are, though.
No, I mean, talking about as far as the plot elements is fine, but that word would get us automatically flagged by the YouTube censors. Mm-hmm. So just to clarify, we're not censoring what you can say. So our listeners at home know what I'm talking about. Just certain words will automatically cause issues. Yep. Which is why YouTube channels you listen to might have funny words for things or mispronounce it. No, it's not that they can't speak right. They're just, dodging the censors.
Yeah, I was trying to be respectful of that.
No, absolutely. So is there a romance element? We saw the smoochie on the couch, and then the lady got the glowing blue eyes. We see her again later.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because when I first started writing this, and I'm trying to skirt around some of the issues without giving too much away, but
no, absolutely no spoilers.
Yeah, so there are three main characters. Narayan, he is the king whose father, he is the prince, the heir apparent, and his father is killed and he becomes the king. That happens like in the first 3 pages, so I don't mind giving that spoiler away. And then there is the mage. His name is Einar. And then there is a female main character as well. Her name is Sherry. And so at the beginning of the book, you don't quite know this yet, but there is some love tension between Sherry and Narayan. She is a noble and he is royalty. And they grew up together and they were best friends and she fell in love with him, but he abuses her in many different ways. And part of the story, again, without getting into it too much, is her having to learn to forgive him for all of the terrible things that he does to her. So kind of a love interest, but also I'm not sure if they're really meant to be together.
Which is honest. I mean, we know that love interests can change over the course of a book. I do write some romance, and so there are times we really want to get it together, but there is something to be said for the longer path of relationships, that sometimes there's the one that's right now, and then later, as they develop as people, they find the one that is the right one, and that it's okay that we have those developing relationships, especially when we're looking at, this is a book one. Is it a book one in a series, or is it standalone? How does that
when I first wrote it, funny, a little context for why I wrote this. So this is not the first novel that I've written, but it's the first thing I've published. I wrote another novel, which I've also finished part of the second book for that. And I was like trying to get it published, and I was like, man, I'm having a hard time getting this published. I feel like I just need to get over the publishing barrier. Excuse me. And then I will go back and finally publish this first book I wrote. So this Secrets of the Erilaz was supposed to just be this like, kind of crappy novel I just threw out there to get something done. But as any creative knows, as soon as you start working on something, it becomes your baby. And of course, I put just as much love and effort into it as I did my first novel, perhaps even more. I don't know. And so the short answer is it was going to be a standalone, but now I think I'm going to have a sequel. I don't know if I can get a trilogy out of the rest of my ideas. We'll see what else comes up when I'm writing the sequel, but there will most likely be a sequel to this at least.
Nothing wrong with a good duet.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Okay, so you've got a trilogy of characters. You've told us a little bit about each of them. So who is the antagonist of the story? Who's the bad guy? Without spoilers. I mean, it sounds like almost the prince is almost.
So he is definitely an anti-hero. He is the main character. I would not say he is the bad guy, because I'd like to think there's some atonement for some of his actions by the end of the book. Not all of them. That's why there has to be a sequel. The bad guy, there is kind of a bad duet. One of them is a secret towards until about halfway through the book, so I don't want to give that one away. And then there is also an evil mage who I don't really flesh out too much as a character. He's going to be the main villain in the second one, but he does show up as well.
Now, I find it interesting in your description of it. You talk about how, let me pull it up real quick because it was kind of cool. That it says that, this is kind of a secular place, so magic is unknown. So is your magic, and this is going into my D&D background, because they kind of tend to split magic into, there's the arcana-based kind of magic or a divine-based kind of magic. Do you follow that kind of thing? Is it a divine thing, and that's why it doesn't work in a secular world? Or how did you put your magic together? Because there's definitely a magic system here, and it's very important to how the story works. So without big spoilers anyway, what can you tell us about the magic?
So great question. First, I called it a secular kingdom because the kingdom itself does not believe in magic. It's not that magic doesn't exist. It's that they are for lack of a better term, like a non-religious people. So they don't think that there's any sort of such thing as magic. Now, there's a little bit of conspiracy behind that. But to go into the magic system question, and again, I'm paraphrasing here. I really need to do research before I come on these podcasts so I can get it right. So I'm really going to paraphrase here. But there are different sources or different names for different types of magicians. So, for example, a sorcerer might be someone who has innate power within them that they can cast magic. And then perhaps a magician is someone who goes and reads books and learns the arcana and learn how to cast spells that way. And then a warlock is someone who calls in a higher power to cast these spells. So there's different ways that this magic can be accomplished in different universes through different characters. Now, in this particular universe, the characters, and again, I'm trying not to spoil too much, but they write runes to enact another power to do the magic for them. So they are warlocks in a certain sense. I don't really call them warlocks in the book. I call them Erilaz. And if you don't mind, I'll read this two-sentence definition that I pulled from Wikipedia, which obviously never gets anything wrong. This is Erilaz or Erilar is a migration period Proto-Norse word attested on various Eldar Futhark inscriptions, which has been interpreted to mean magician or rune master. So an Erilaz is someone who is a rune master and then can therefore cast the runes. Did that answer all of your questions at once?
All of the ones that I can ask without getting into details that we probably shouldn't talk about yet.
Read the book.
I think one of these days we need to do a, reflecting on books with the spoiler edition. Because we always talk about the books and we interview you guys and we say, okay, don't spoil anything. And then I read the books and then I go, well, now I have things I want to talk about. So we may have to think about that, JR, if one day we want to do returning guest spoiler edition, where we would talk about some of the things that we couldn't talk about, especially if we're talking about, books later on in the series. Anyway, that's neither here nor there, but it makes me wonder. So yes, so you can see that using the Futhark and go ahead.
I was going to say it's totally fair. Like I've interviewed over 100 authors as well. You don't have time to read every single one of their books. Each and every one of their books deserves to be read, absolutely, but it's hard when you're the one that has to read them every single week to ask the questions.
It's true. There's just not enough time. You talked about Harry Potter, and the one thing I really want from that is the time turner, so that I can say, okay, I'm going to take a nap, and now I'm going to go back, and during that time, I'm going to read a book, and now I'm going to go back during that time and do something else. But as we all know, sooner or later, that leads to trouble.
Yeah.
All right, JR, what's your next question?
So we've got the magic in the world. And it's a fantasy novel. So are there fantasy races as well, or is it just, grade A basic humans?
It is just a human. I wrote this. It is a fictional place with fictional people. But if you just plopped this plot into the real world, it would be exactly like it is. There's no divinity, so to speak. There's no magical races. There's no magical fauna or anything like that. It's just as if it took place in some place in Europe, which I will not name, but probably exists.
Okay. So totally not England, but England.
Not England.
Okay.
And if there are a couple places where I allude to where it might be, if for those with a keen eye.
Okay.
Is there a reason you keep it secret?
Just to keep the mystique. If I tell you where it is, you're like, okay. So also, if I tell you where it is, you're going to look at a map and be like, oh, this guy messed up his map and his cartography. So, it is a fantasy place.
Inspired by. It gives you a lot of room to wiggle.
Exactly. And that's why I love fantasy. People, they'll be like, oh, hey, this wouldn't happen in real life. I'm like, it happened in my universe. Suck it.
Go ahead.
Hold on. That's the funny thing about this is you hear people say that wouldn't happen in real life, even when I happen to know veterans, for instance, that lived their own experience that they wrote into books, and people were like, that's not real. Like, what are you talking about? That was them. Like, I've seen the mission statements. What are you talking about? And so sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, and sometimes people are always kind of shocked when you see, and if that narrow window of people's experience in war is that way, what other endeavors where other people have strange events, like maybe first responders or police officers or hospital staff? I mean, there's got to be other instances where people, if they told you the truth, you wouldn't believe them.
100%. And there are things that I wanted to put in a story that happened to me in my own life. I'm like, the audience would never believe this. Like, it's just too convenient, but it actually happened. So I get it.
It does that. All right, can I ask now?
Absolutely.
All right. So there's like JR says, I love myself some fantasy books, but one of my very, very favorite things is I am a big fan of maps, indexes, all the little extra bits that go with it. So is there a map, or are we going to have to just, pound on you until you give us one later?
I drew a map very terribly because I'm a very terrible artist. So it exists, but there is no way you're ever going to see what I drew. So perhaps someday I will hire someone to make a nice map of what I scratched out on a piece of paper. So the short answer is not right now, but someday. And it does make sense on the map that I drew because I got very meticulous with the distances between certain places and the way that the topography of the land works to make it realistic as far as where there might be a desert or a forest or an ocean or things like that. So there is a map, but you're not going to see it.
All right. So what I'm hearing is people need to buy more books so that you make more profits so that you can produce a really cool map.
100% true. Thank you so much.
All right, people, you've been given, your marching orders because I need a map.
I actually know somebody who does maps, and I'll have to put you in contact with them afterwards. They're not that expensive if you've got the sketch. Incarnate's a very good thing, but if you've got technical skills, like I said, Incarnate's user-friendly.
Incarnate. I'll have to write that down. That's a map maker.
Like Inkarnate. Incarnate.
Okay. But there are people that make it, and one of the authors I know does it as a side hustle because he learned how to do it when he made his own map, and then he's like, well, other authors might want this. And so the good thing about Inkarnate is unlike some programs out there, when you make the map, you own it, so you can actually use it in your books. You can monetize it. I used Fractal Mapper for a while, and then we tried to put that in stuff, and they're like, yeah, did you read the terms of service? You can't do that. I'm like, oh, hell. So when you talk about this world, right now we're looking at a very narrow snapshot of it. is the world larger than what's happening around it? Is there potential for you to explore more of it? Or are you thinking once you're done with this duet, you're out of this world and moving on?
There's absolutely room to explore more. As mentioned, I give some hints as to where this takes place by naming other places in the world. And then also the Erilaz come from a quote unquote place in the north. And so there's perhaps a prequel where there's a war that's alluded to in this book, which is why these Erilaz, they exiled and ran away from their homes and spread throughout the rest of the world. So yes, absolutely. Little tidbit of world building there for you. But absolutely room for expansion in the future.
Okay. Do you have plans for that going forward, or do you think you've got other stories you want to tell first?
So I have not started the sequel to this because I am writing a different book. Happy to give you the very, very brief rundown on that because I'm only like 5 chapters if you'd like, but I know we're focusing on Secrets of the Erilaz right now.
Sure, real quick.
Oh no, elevator pitches.
Elevator pitch? I haven't even finished the book. You think I have an elevator pitch? Come on.
Yes.
Let's see here.
Do it.
It's going to be a Indiana Jones meets Michael Crichton interdimensional technology story.
Sweet. So going off in the sci-fi direction, or is it science fantasy?
It'll be fully sci-fi.
Sweet.
But like a realistic sci-fi, near realism sci-fi, not like space opera kind of thing.
Okay.
Color me interested. Okay. For people that are anxiously waiting, at what point, is there a timeline for book 2? Does 1 give you a satisfactory enough ending? You're not going to be cussing your name and calling you a cliffhangering jerkface?
There is room for a secondary because, as I mentioned, there are 2 villains. 1 dies, 1 escapes. So there is some semblance of closure. I don't think it's an incredible cliffhanger. So I don't think people will be mad at me, but people have certainly asked for sequels. So that will be coming someday. It's just you never have enough time, man. I have a whole spreadsheet of hundreds of books I want to write someday, and I have a day job.
Yes, and a family, and they're demanding, especially when you've got ones that are still, under 3 foot tall. Those little hobbits take a whole lot of things, and you don't want to miss it because you blink and suddenly they're announcing to you that they're going off to college, and it's just like, wait, but you weren't you 5 minutes ago? So we totally get it. Enjoy these early years because they go by way too fast. The books will always be there.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were talking about the books at first. I mean, I was like, all my books are less than 3 feet tall, and hopefully they go to colleges someday and everybody will read them.
Right, faster, and yep. All of the above. All of the above.
The good thing is if the book is big, it can double as a weapon. So, stop a bullet, hit people in the head with it, drop it from tall buildings, and crush skulls. I mean, you could literally get big enough and then name it Skull Crusher for your book.
Oh, painful.
So we're talking fantasy, but fantasy generally we think, old, medieval, but sometimes you also have sandal fantasy. What do they call it? Sword and sandal. So what if we're using global history is kind of an analog. Is it fair to assume it's kind of a medieval-esque world?
Yes, it's fully medieval. It takes place somewhere in Europe. Again, if anybody can figure out from the hints I gave the approximate area, I'll buy you a beer someday. So go read the book and let me know. Shoot me an email or something. I do give a hint or 2. So yes, it does take place as a fantasy in medieval Europe, circa 12 to 1300, somewhere around there.
Okay. When we're talking globally, are we looking mostly from the 3 people, or do you actually get to see more of the world? Because the world for an average commoner in that era versus nobility is very different.
Yeah, absolutely. I touch on that in the book as well. So there's 3 sections in the book. Again, 1 takes place from the perspective of Narayan, the prince king, 1 from Einar, the mage, and then 1 from Sherry, who is nobility. And in the 3rd section, Sherry goes into the town and starts talking with some of the commoners to get a little bit more of a glimpse at their life. So I do touch on that a little bit. I'm sorry, I just totally forgot the rest of your question.
So who is the point of view character? Is it mostly nobility? Because the story told from the average person versus the highborn is very different stratified culture that you're going to get in a pre-modern or medieval-esque world.
Yeah, I feel like I touched on both segments of society: the rich, the nobility, and the king and the queen, and then also the paupers. Einar, he's basically a hermit, so he lives like in a hut in the woods, and so I touch on that a little bit. Sherry goes and talks to the commoners, and then also Narayan, without too many spoilers, he also gets exiled. He gets chased out of his own kingdom, and so he has to go and see what it's like in his kingdom. And a lot of people aren't really happy with him and the decisions that the crown has made. They don't even necessarily know that he is the king. Like, if you think about it, a lot of people in countries back then, they didn't know what the nobility looked like. They'd heard of their name maybe, but they could not pick them out of a crowd other than if they had tons of guards and their royal gown on and stuff. And Narayan does not have this when he's in exile. So he gets a good point of view from a lot of soldiers and commoners about what they really think about him.
Is there anything about the book that we haven't asked that you think we need to cover before we, bring this to a close?
Yeah, I would say spoilers. I'm sorry, what was that?
Because we're trying to avoid spoilers, and I have lots of questions because I'm a history nerd, so I'm trying to control myself.
Well, I'll say you can ask any of the questions, and if I think there'll be a spoiler, I will just tell you so. But the one thing I would say about this book is I didn't focus so much on world building as a lot of people who like fantasy do, and I made a conscious decision for that. I kind of give the reader enough to get by. There's two kingdoms. They're at war for a specific reason. There are some surrounding lands. You understand a little bit about the topography and the locations inside of the countries and next to each other. But I don't really go into too much other than that, because this is a story about the characters. And it's really meant to be it's not trying to be Lord of the Rings, and it's not trying to be Game of Thrones, because those masterpieces have already been written. I want you to read this book because you want to know about these characters and how they're going to fix the big screw ups that they did.
Okay, so right now I see paperback and I see ebook. Is it going to come out in audiobook at any point?
A lot of people have asked me if I'm going to do that. They say that I have quite the voice for audio. I would like to do that, but I'm not sure if you've ever read anything out loud or try to narrate anything. But if you look at a book, let's just say it's going to be like 14 hours finish audio, right? That's going to take someone like 60 hours to do, let alone edit, because of all the time you have to do rereads, or you did a poor inflection or something like that. So I would love to do it myself. I don't want to use AI for it, because I put a few sentences in AI and the inflections all sucked. And I was like, there's no way my book is going to be represented by this. Who knows, maybe in a couple of years that'll change. But I would like to do it myself, so I just need to find the time, as with every project. That's
fair. We know we have some listeners for various, reading disabilities, etc., that they listen with their ears, they read with their ears. So that's one of the questions they always want to know. And I get there's an expense in going into audio, and it's hard to make that work from a financial aspect. It's almost like at some point in the beginning, as new authors, you just have to accept it is a vanity project in the beginning, because you're not necessarily making a lot of money back on your audiobooks. But yeah, okay. So there's going to be a sequel, audio at some point. Do you have planned in your head where the sequel's going to go? Do you know where the story ends?
I do. Well, I have some ideas, and again, I can't tell you anything without giving away major spoilers from the first one. But I do have some ideas and some cool scenes and some good character arcs and some new characters.
Nice.
Okay.
As one should.
All right. Well, this is the part, dear listener, where we do like to remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books, and it really does matter, especially with a new author. This is his debut novel. So go give some love. Go to Goodreads. Go to Amazon. Start a website. He does have the paperback sold wide, so if you're buying it on those wide platforms, Barnes & Nobles, Kobo, and even eBay, you can leave reviews there as well. So it really does make a difference for authors. So again, we remind you to please do that. It really does help. If people wanted to track you down on the internet, stalk you as one does to find out more, join your newsletter and the like, how might they do that? And as usual, links will be in the show notes.
Yep, links wherever he puts them. You can follow me on Instagram, MJ Struven. I have a website. Follow me on YouTube at The Writers Are People 2 Podcast, though I might be changing that name in the future and branching out to other content. We'll see. Those are my 2 main platforms. And Amazon. Find me on Amazon, Secrets of the Erilaz. Leave me a review, please.
Absolutely. So we have all that linked. And then Jana, this is the new year and the new you. So I do have you linked in our show notes now. But now I have to do my own because I didn't follow my own advice. So,
after all of that, you still didn't do yours?
No, I've got to make a link tree for myself to link to the link tree for the podcast so I can do that. Because when you did that, I'm like, that's so much easier. But
we're getting really meta. We're linking to the link tree and we have link
trees. I know. But
you
can
now.
follow us, dear listener, on our link tree for the podcast at linktree, linktr.ee, linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChute, the Rumble, the YouTube, the TikTok, the Twitters. We've got our Spotify, our Discord, our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. For professional purposes only, people save the shenanigans from Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the email. You can support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it's for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee until they get high on their own supply. And in Jana's case, it's not going to be coffee. She's going to be drinking their hot chocolate because she's addicted.
That's right. I like that.
So I could see if Jana's traveling in time, she's going nowhere pre-existence of hot chocolate, because if she can't have Dr. Pepper and she can't have hot chocolate, she just doesn't even want to live.
I know. That'd be terrible. We're not going to think about that.
Right. And if you want some of that coffee brand coffee, the link is in the show notes. The discount code is podcast grunts. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win, people. And then I didn't mention yet, because it isn't as of recording this ready, but we are starting a Substack for the podcast, sort of in lieu of a proper website that will link to the same stuff I put in the Discord. So it'll be the write-up for the episode. It'll include the links to the Rumble, BitChute, YouTube, and Spotify. And then from Spotify, you can go to all the other audio platforms. But in addition to that, for people that want to sign up to get open call notifications for when we're going to be doing future panels, that will be available in the newsletter portion. And that's the only thing the Substack will send out emails about is when we do our next batch of open calls. And if any of them speak to you, you can respond to that, and we can go from there. And with that, I would like to thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. Thank you for coming on, Matt. We're going to have you back to talk about your movie, your indie horror fantasy movie. And we look forward to it. This was a lot of fun. I had to stop myself because I was going to start asking questions that would get a little nerdy. And then I'm going to get letters because people like to send me letters, and it gets ugly. So with that.
No, you did good. I'm proud of you, JR.
With that, we're going to hit the end button. Wait for it. Jana, stop the smoochie.